Welcome to Stellar Sisters, the podcast where cosmic wisdom meets soul-enriching conversation.
We explore astrology, human design, and the unique blueprint of your soul, helping you understand yourself on a deeper level.
Consider this your permission slip to embrace the magic of being authentically you.
Let's begin. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Stellar Sisters podcast. We're your hosts, Shaniel and Sydney. And today we are diving into the throat center in human design, Mercury, the third house, how we communicate, speak, express ourselves, and how it can be the most authentic for you. And before we dive into that, we're just going to catch up a little bit on what's going on astrologically and what we've just been observing ourselves. So Shaniel, how are you doing right now? Anything coming up for you? This solar eclipse just happened in Aquarius.
Yeah, I'm doing good. My whole family got sick this week, which I feel like is typical for during the eclipse time. You just kind of feel a little bit more run down and tired. And so, yeah, we all caught a cold, which is just lingering and lingering. So it's not super fun. It's just a time that I'm really just trying to rest and surrender to the energy and let it play out.
Yeah, love that. Me too. I feel like I've been more observant this time and just really letting myself try to rest. This whole week, I canceled a couple of things this week and just allowed myself to try to rest without guilt and not feeling like I had to keep going and doing.
Mm-hmm.
I dropped Faye off at school the first day. It was actually the eclipse day because she had off on Monday. And the teacher was like, "You guys are still standing because like the whole school is sick."
Yeah.
And both her teachers were out and she was okay. We had been sick prior to that, but yeah, a lot of sickness going around.
Yeah.
Everybody I know has something. I finally just got over a really bad chest cold, which it sounds like you have now.
Yeah, we had the exact same thing. Yeah.
So just a lot of observing for me. This is happening in my fifth house, and I feel like I'm just really thinking back to when I was a kid and how I was parented and what I learned from that and, you know, what I want to bring forward from that and what I don't want to bring forward from that, and trying to observe myself parenting and just being more conscious and aware of what I'm doing and saying. And I definitely don't always get it perfect and I catch myself a lot, but I think that's the first step, is just really noticing those times where you want to make a change. So that's what's been really coming through for me this week during the eclipse. Have you had any insights?
The Aquarius eclipse is in my second house of money and finances. And I just think for our family this year, so I'm a stay-at-home mom, which, you know, I've told the story before, but I was laid off from my job when my son was 3 months old and decided just to stay home with him. So, you know, that was almost 2 years ago now. And so with our family just being on one income now, we're much more conscious of our budget and what we're spending and how we're using our resources, you know, and I think this eclipse is just really highlighting that for me. But I think it's a good thing. It's definitely a change, you know, going from a 2-income household to a 1-income household, but it's good. I think it has me thinking about, you know, just like using what I have and not running out to like go buy something that I don't really need, and just becoming more aware of my finances and money in a way that I wasn't before. So that's been really kind of on my mind. And also just like working on my astrology business, which is my source of income at the moment. And thinking about different ways that I can connect with people and, you know, switch up my offerings and bring new things to my business too. Because the second house is a very kind of entrepreneurial house in the way that you kind of make money. And so that's on my mind as well. So it definitely makes sense for an eclipse in the second house, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And anything else you wanted to share astrologically right now?
So one thing that I think is really cool and interesting is there is a documentary that was just released on Lilith Fair. I watched it and it was really cool, really interesting. I really liked the documentary. And so if you don't know what Lilith Fair was, it was a music festival founded by Sarah McLachlan, and it ran for 3 years from 1997 to 1999. And what was so groundbreaking about it was that it was an all female music festival. So she just had all female artists. And back in the 90s, that was really like revolutionary. That was really like had never been done before, which is kind of insane because it was just only 30 years ago.
Yeah.
But in the documentary, she talks about how like they wouldn't put two female artists together to go out on tour because they thought no one would buy tickets and no one would come. She talks about how they wouldn't play two female artists' songs on the radio back to back because they didn't think people wanted to hear two females written singer-songwriters in a row. It's just like insane that wasn't that long ago.
That's insane. And to also think that we were kids during that time.
Mm-hmm.
But like thinking back, I was listening to a lot of female artists of the time and like so into their music,
Yeah.
you know, and I wish I could have gone to Lilith Fair.
Oh
You
my
know,
God. Me
it would have been
too.
amazing. So yeah, thinking back, it's like, how was that the time? But it was in the 90s. That's how it was.
It was. Yeah. It's just like so much has changed in 30 years, but yet so much hasn't also.
Yeah.
So I was watching that documentary. So of course I want to look up the astrology of like what was happening at the time. And when Lilith Fair started, it was just the beginning of Saturn and Aries back in the 90s. And so the festival is having its Saturn return because Saturn just entered Aries again. So it's interesting the timing that this documentary would come out because it's having its Saturn return. And I find that happens very, very frequently. Like if there was a big cultural moment or an artist was having a big moment, when that event has its particular Saturn return, it usually comes back up in like pop culture again. And so I thought that was really interesting about that the fair is having its Saturn return. And I also looked at Sarah McLachlan's birth chart to see like what was happening in her chart, because how amazing is it that she like founded that and started this all female music festival? I mean, that's just like big energy. And so she also has Saturn in Aries natally. So she was born with Saturn in Aries. And so she was actually having her first Saturn return when she founded the festival. So I thought that was also super interesting. So she's in the midst of she just started her second Saturn return, because you have 2 or 3 in your life if you get to live to be like 80s, in your like late 80s, early 90s, you'll have 3. But yeah, so in her second Saturn return, the documentary is released. So it just shows how everything's a cycle in astrology and things repeat and come back up again. But she actually has natally Saturn and Aries in the 5th house. And the 5th house is the house of creativity. And so her Saturn return is all about, creative projects and creative endeavors. And obviously she's a singer-songwriter. Creativity is imperative to who she is and what she does and what she's built her career on and her life on. I thought that was really interesting. And also Saturn in Aries is all about being assertive and being a leader and really working on those aspects of ourselves. And I think Sarah McLachlan and what she did for women in music in the 90s is a really great example of that. Like that was revolutionary for her to become a woman and to stand up to this huge empire, which is the music industry that was completely male dominated, and say, no, I want to do things differently. And I want to, and she got so much backlash and so much hate. And, you know, people would scrutinize her and say that, like, why do you hate men? And all of this stuff that is so stupid. But it was part of her Saturn return and part of her lesson to kind of learn that like assertion and leadership that is that Saturn and Aries energy. And I thought that was just really fascinating. And so I think I'm going to look for similar themes to kind of come up during this Saturn return, and maybe new leaders emerging, you know, that have maybe been like the underdog, but that are like rising to power now. And also, I was looking at Sarah McLaughlin's chart. I was like, she has to have a strong like Venus signature, because this is, you know, so female led and female driven. And she actually has a Libra midheaven. And the midheaven is the point that represents your career, in your public life, in your professional life, which is ruled by Venus. So she does have that kind of Venusian women signature in her birth chart, specifically related to like career and public identity. So that the astrology of all of that was just really fascinating to me. And I really liked the documentary. Yeah, you should watch it if you haven't.
I haven't watched it. I'm excited to watch it.
Yeah. But like she had on Sheryl Crow, Jewel, Fiona Apple, Tracy Chapman, Erica Badu, Missy Elliott, the Dixie Chicks, Natalie Merchant, just like so many like amazing 90s like female performing artists, which is like my heart and soul. Like I love all of them. Grew up obviously like listening to all of that music, so it just feels really special to me.
Well, maybe they'll have a comeback festival or concert during Saturn and Aries.
I know they talked about like trying to like revive it and do it again, but for some reason it just wasn't working. I don't know if they had, I don't know why it didn't work, but if she ever did it again, oh man, I would love to go.
Oh my gosh, me too.
And then the other thing that I was thinking about, Saturn moving into Aries in my own birth chart. And so Aries is my fourth house of home and family. Typically, what I think of when I think about this transit is, you know, there's some sort of like major focus or restructuring on like your home or your living situation. Like maybe you are buying a house, maybe you are moving, maybe you are renovating. And also that energy comes to like your family unit, your parents. Maybe there are shifting dynamics with parents, or maybe parents are going through a new chapter of their life. And I think all of those are actually true for me, but also I just started graduate school to become a marriage and family therapist. And so, you know, throughout this whole, and I started just this month in February, just 2 weeks ago, like pretty much as soon as Saturn entered my fourth house of home and family.
Wow.
And and obviously marriage and family therapy, you are looking at someone's family, and the language in marriage and family therapy is like the system that they come through, that they are in and that they grew up in. And so that is very, very, that has so much to do with the fourth house in the birth chart. That is the fourth house essentially. But like the fact that Saturn moved into my fourth house, and that is when I started this program, because I have honestly wanted to do this for a very, very long time. Since I was in undergrad, which was you know, how long ago is that? Over 15 years ago.
Wow.
Um, and for one reason or another, I just never did it. And, I went in a different direction and worked in HR and recruiting, which I think gave me a good foundation for this career. But I was thinking about that and just how, for some reason, astrologically, like I wasn't meant to do it like a moment before this moment.
Mm-hmm.
And how much astrology kind of confirms and validates that for me. And I don't necessarily understand why. I don't understand why, like, it had to like work out this way, but obviously God has a bigger plan for my life, more so than what I know and understand. And that brings me peace, because a big part of me wishes that I would have done this 10 years ago when I don't have little kids, when I had much less responsibility, but
Yeah.
I don't know. It's meant to play out the way that it is meant to play out. And I'm a big believer of that. And astrology has reinforced that for me. But also, what's interesting about this is I natally have Mars in Aries. So this is this Saturn that is on my Mars right now, that is conjunct my natal Mars, because it's at 4 degrees of Aries. So it's in the early degrees. And also that Mars rules my midheaven, which is my career sector. And so natally, I would look at my chart and be like, wow, the ruler of my midheaven is in my 4th house of home and family. And so that makes them two connected. So usually I would say, like, do you work, does like home and family have any, like, make sense and correlate at all to what you do for your career and profession?
Yeah.
And for me, that never really totally made sense to me in my birth chart.
Yeah.
But now, becoming a marriage and family therapist, I mean, it makes complete sense, right? It
Mm-hmm.
makes 100% sense. And
Yeah.
the fact that the ruler of my midheaven is having this big, huge transit of Saturn and Neptune, entering Aries in my 4th house, it represents this huge brand new chapter in terms of my career. And so I just thought that was really interesting, because also sometimes you maybe have to like think outside of the box with transits, because I wouldn't necessarily think, I didn't even put this together with Saturn going into my 4th house of home and family and then going back to school to being a marriage and family therapist. I am also having eclipses in my 9th house, which is the house of higher education. So that, I thought that was the eclipse, I thought that was the astrology of me going back to school. But then when I
Mm-hmm.
really thought about it, I said, it is, but there's even more of a layer there with Saturn going into my 4th house.
Yeah,
Does that
that's
make sense?
fascinating. Yeah. I love
Yeah.
that so much. And almost to me too, with your Mars there being activated, it's almost like you having the courage. It's like pushing you, it's like bringing out that courage and assertiveness to actually do this now.
Wow. Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that, but you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. I love it.
Uh,
So proud of you for doing this. Because it takes courage to go do a completely different career that you haven't been doing. It's hard to do something that you're not used to, or that doesn't feel comfortable for you yet.
yeah, it does. I mean, just going back to school
Yeah.
after, being out of school for 15 or 16 years is really nerve-wracking. And also
Yeah.
doing it when I have a young child is kind of insane,
Yeah.
because, it's a lot to all juggle and balance. But
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see. I got to do it. So, um, yeah, it also reminded me of one time during a solar return chart of mine, my 9th house was really highlighted and activated, which is the house of higher education. And usually I would say, like, are you learning something new? Are you going back to school? But for that year, I started working at a university. And so I was going to a like campus every single day. I worked on a campus. And so, I wasn't going back to school necessarily, but like
Right.
I was like going to and working at a university. So I thought that was really interesting how sometimes like the astrology of things plays out, but in
Yeah.
like a cheeky way, in a way that like maybe you don't always like necessarily think of. Transits always make sense, but sometimes you might have to think a little bit like outside of the box, I guess.
Yeah. Or some things just click maybe a couple years later. You're like, oh, of course that was about that. Why didn't I think of that during the time that it was happening?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
so interesting. So fascinating.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing all of that. I think it does help give people good ideas too about their own transits and how to think about their chart.
Yeah, because it's a constant like just learning process, it's a
Yeah.
practice. But let's get into the topic of today's show, which is all about communication, human design, and astrology. So, I know you're going to talk to us about the throat center in human design.
Yeah. And what really prompted this episode or topic idea was just, everything going on in the world right now. And it is amplifying voices. People are speaking up a lot more. They're speaking what's on their mind, what's on their heart. I also have been witnessing just what almost looks like the pressure to speak sometimes. Like XYZ person saying something, so I feel like I should say something too. It's so important, of course, to use our voices. Our voice matters, but it can be really helpful to turn to human design and astrology to show us how and why we can use our voices and using them in the most authentic way for ourselves. And again, right now with that collective energy, it's kind of feeling like we all have to be posting and protesting and sharing and commenting. If you're not doing something, you're doing it wrong. At least that's kind of what I feel like I've been seeing a lot and hearing a lot. So in human design, everything is moving towards the throat center. Every single center is coming out towards the throat center so we can express ourselves and speak, right? But we all have it set up in a different configuration. Some of us have an open throat, some of us have a defined throat, closed throat. So it's really important to kind of understand what that means, to tune into it, and just learn a little bit more about it. Understanding how your throat center works can really change how you communicate, can change how you navigate what it is you actually want to express. And right now, I think it can be really helpful to think about this because when this episode airs, we're going to be in a Mercury retrograde. So just kind of reflecting on maybe how we speak, how we communicate, how it is that we express ourselves. So for this episode, you want to pull up your chart on our website. You can go to stellarsisterspodcast.com and click on create free chart and just pull up your chart because it's going to be helpful for you to see your throat center, see if it's open or closed, and see what activations you have coming off of it. So pull that up. And the throat center is the center that is third from the top. So it's that first square in your chart. And the throat center governs communication, self-expression, our impact. It's the manifestation center or hub in human design. And don't think about like manifesting something. It's more mechanical. Like anybody can experience manifestation mechanically when energy is reaching the throat. In human design, the throat is this manifestation hub. It's where energy becomes words or action, visibility, something tangible. It's where our internal awareness, that energy and pressure actually is externalized into reality. And everything, again, is leading to the throat center. Everything is ultimately leading there. The throat center is kind of like this release valve for internal pressure. And it connects to every single center in the body graph except the head center and the root center. So the head is kind of this mental pressure. The root is adrenal pressure, pressure to do. And then every other center is connected to the throat. So it's all moving there. And sometimes it can feel like we have to speak or want to speak. But if we look at if our throat is defined or not, we can kind of start to lean into what is correct for us, what's in most alignment for us. And just something to keep in mind that your strategy and authority are the end game. You always want to listen to your strategy and authority first, and then speak in the way that you feel in your body that's correct for you. But let's go over defined throat versus undefined open throat. 72% of people have a defined throat. So most people have consistent access to their voice, to expression. The other 28% have an open throat, and it's more so an amplifier for other people's voices. So with the defined throat, the core traits are having a consistent way of expressing yourself, having a reliable voice. There are consistent themes that are going to come up just based on where the throat is connected to, which center it's connected to. And the high vibe, healthy state of a defined throat is really using their strategy and authority for correct timing. You're able to express yourself consistently in whatever your unique way is. And you don't feel pressure to overspeak. You say your piece and you don't feel like you have to keep explaining yourself. And then the not self of the defined throat or the low vibe is feeling like you feel like you have to talk a lot, talking too much, speaking from conditioning of other open centers that you have. Maybe even quieting your voice to feel like you need to fit in, or feeling like your voice doesn't matter, or playing small. Those things can come up. And it's really important to know that just because you can speak consistently doesn't mean you should always speak. So a high vibe mantra for the defined throat is, I speak my truth. I have a powerful voice. And then the undefined throat, so this is going to be completely open. Well, not completely open. You could have a gate defined there, but it's not going to be colored in. It's going to be white in your chart. 28% of people have an open throat. And the traits of an open throat center are having an inconsistent voice. Your expression can fluctuate. You might feel uncomfortable in forced speaking situations. So you're really an advocate for the voiceless. You're really here to amplify other people's voices. And you might communicate or express yourself differently just depending on who you're with or the environment that you're in. So, you might be with one person and be a certain way, express yourself a certain way, and then you might be with a different person and it could come out in a different way. And then the healthy kind of high vibe state of an undefined throat is being comfortable with silence. We don't always have to be talking and expressing ourselves, and really trusting your body's timing and confidently listening when you're not speaking, and then sharing when you do feel like it's important and you want to speak. And understanding that your voice is going to develop in spurts, and you can be a good sensor of who is actually speaking truth and who's not when you have this open. And the not self of an open throat, or like the low vibe of it, is feeling like you need to attract attention, feeling like you need to relieve the pressure by speaking, kind of planning out what you want to say in advance, or over explaining yourself. And you can feel like with this open, if you're kind of in the low vibe state, is anybody even noticing me? Is anybody hearing me? If I don't say something, am I going to be noticed? Am I going to feel invisible? Am I going to disappear? It can kind of feel like that. So a good question to ask yourself if you have this undefined is, am I speaking because I'm trying to attract attention right now? Because I feel like nobody's noticing me. And if you feel like that, a good way to get out of that is just by continuing to practice your strategy and authority and kind of dropping down into the body instead of being so caught up in the mind. And good mantras for having this undefined are: I'm an advocate for others, I can sense others' needs, and I am confident in my timing. And I think it's cool to look at your chart to see where your connections are. If you have your throat center defined, you're going to have at least one channel coming off the throat. So it's cool to see which channel it's connected to. And it's connected to a lot of different centers. So if your throat's connected to your ajna, which is right above the throat, it's about mental awareness being expressed. If it's connected to the G center, which is right below it, it's about identity, love, direction being expressed. If it's connected down to the spleen, it is intuitive awareness being expressed. If it's connected to your heart or ego center, it's about willpower being expressed. If it's connected to the solar plexus, it's about your emotions, emotional energy being expressed. And then if it's connected to your sacral center, it's all about your life force, creativity being expressed. And again, the head and the root do not connect directly to the throat. They have to move through a different center first. So what's interesting though about the throat is that most of these channels are projected channels. So even though you might have a defined throat, if you don't have it connected to one of the motors, if it's not connected to the ego, the solar plexus, or the sacral, then it's this energy that needs to be recognized or invited like a projector. So if you do have the motor to the throat, you're either a manifester or a manifesting generator, you have more of this voice that is initiating, it's impactful. It's literally carrying fuel from a motor to the throat. And sometimes these manifestors and manifesting generators, they have that access. So it can almost seem so natural and easy for them. They can be really great public speakers. And sometimes it can be more difficult, even if you do have motors defined, if it's not connected up to the throat center, it can take a little bit longer sometimes to literally tap into that center and express what you want to express. And then I just want to run through the gifts that are associated with each gate in the throat. So, we went over what's defined and undefined means. And then you can look at your throat center and see which gates are defined. So you might have a full channel, you might have one gate, a couple gates. Most people are going to have at least one of these gates defined. There's 11 gates in the throat center, but there's a lot more gates than any other center in the body graph. So that's just why it's a bit more rare to not have at least one gate defined, because there are so many different activations that could be in the chart. So I'm just going to go through each one and explain how you can speak up in a way that is authentic to you if you have this gift. So if you have 62, this is I think or not. And it's about communicating, teaching, sharing, organizing details and facts. So really letting data speak clearly. This is a Cancer gate if you have that, gate 62. And then gate 23 is a Taurus gate. This is I know or not. So this is about simplifying complex ideas, communicating individual insights, and really explaining things to people as if they were a child, like really dumbing it down that way. Then if you have 56, this is a Cancer and a Leo gate. So it transits part of Cancer, part of Leo. And this is I believe or not. This is about sharing meaning. This is the gate of someone who's a stimulating storyteller, somebody that could write a book. Gate 35 is I feel or experience or not. And this is about sharing experiences. With this gift, you could volunteer, you can engage, you can tell, a personal story. And that's a Gemini gate. And then gate 12, that's also a Gemini gate. Most gates in the throat are Gemini gates. And gate 12 is I know I can try if I'm in the mood or not. So this is more of a moody gate. This one does reach down to the solar plexus. That's why. But these people can really share in a poetic way. They're able to channel their feelings into something creative. You could go write, move your body, paint, whatever that poetic, creative outlet is for you. And then gate 45, this is also a Gemini gate. This is I have or not. This is about just being a natural leader, kind of having this royal natural leader energy, able to direct others, using your voice to organize and allocate resources, stepping into leadership when called. 33, gate 33 is a Leo gate. This is I remember or not. It's about sharing observations and wisdom, sharing lessons of the past. Once you have a perspective on whatever that thing is. Gate 8 is a Taurus gate. And this one is I know I can make a contribution or not. So having a unique self-expression, sharing beauty, good taste, having a design eye, and doing this by shining a light on what matters most to you. Gate 31 is a Leo gate. This is I lead or not. And having this is really about rallying people around a shared vision, leading with example, direction, hope. That one is a big leadership gate. And gate 20 is I am now or not. This is very in the moment type of energy. It's about sharing your authentic and unfiltered truth. And that's a Gemini gate, if I didn't say that. And then the last one is gate 16. This is also a Gemini gate. And this is I experiment or not, sharing your skills and your talents and applying them in service in some way. Gate 16. So those are all the gates. And I have a couple examples to go over, just showing how the throat is configured, what the gates, the gifts are, the channels that are there, and just how they kind of show up for people. So I'm going to use my chart as an example first. I have channel 2010 and 2057. So just going with gate 20. And this just means that I'm really here to speak truth in the now. It's like this intuitive in the moment awareness. And I do find that I'm able to easily speak my intuition a bit more than I am able to speak and articulate my emotions. So if you look at my chart, I don't have a direct motor to throat connection. So I find it a bit more difficult for me to actually express how I'm feeling and my emotions that I'm having. But I do find that it's a lot easier for me to express whatever my intuition is in the moment.
Yeah, you just have like an intuition about things.
Yes.
That you're able to communicate. Yeah.
Yeah. And it just kind of comes out. That happens to me a lot. And people are like, well, I don't feel that. I don't know what you mean,
Yeah.
But that just kind of naturally tends to come out. And then with my 1 to 8 channel here, that is really my voice carrying a unique creative expression. It's here to contribute something original. The 2343, this one gives me that ability to take complex things and simplify them in a way that hopefully lands well with people. And again, this is all projected energy. So this has to be invited and recognized, before I feel like I want to contribute and share my insights. Yeah. I mean, the main thing I wanted to show about my chart is just having that mechanic of not being connected to a motor. While I do have my ego center, my solar plexus, and my root defined, those 3 centers are not connected up to the throat. So it just takes me a little bit longer to express those things than it does for me to express my intuition, my direction, and my thoughts, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. That's a good example.
Yeah. So then let's look at Chanel's chart. She has a defined throat as well, 35, 36 connecting down to the solar plexus. So she does have a motor directly connected to her throat. And then she has a couple other gifts in the throat center. So she has 16, 8, and 45. She has a lot of energy here, a lot of gifts. And I know we've talked about 35, 36 a lot on this podcast, but that again is sharing her emotional experiences in a way that moves people, initiates people, because she is a manifester. By her sharing her emotional experiences, it can then help spark an idea or thought or spark anything really within the other types by her just specifically sharing that out into the world. And then gate 45 right here, that carries this natural kind of gather and lead energy. It's directing people towards success. And then gate 8 contributes individually, authentically, helping her inspire people to show up as themselves. So I see that a lot in the way you do astrology readings, actually bringing out that inspiration for people on how they can lean into their chart and pointing out those unique things within themselves. And then gate 16, it's this enthusiasm, and it's good at building skills. And when Shaniel speaks about something, it's her feeling excited and having this competence. And she really does show that she's skilled in articulating and explaining astrology. That comes through so well. This is like a skill that you built, and then you're able to articulate it very well, sharing your skills, sharing your talents with that gate 16.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
That is really cool.
So I also just want to touch on 2 other examples. Taylor Swift is a good example. She's a 5/1 splenic projector, and she has an undefined throat. So our first undefined throat example, she has gate 45 that we just talked about. Shaniel has that gate as well. But with her, with the undefined throat, she's literally here to amplify people's voices with an undefined throat. And I see this, I'm not like a huge Swiftie. I like Taylor Swift's music, but you can see how she's kind of amplifying the voices of her fans in a way. I feel like the way she writes songs and the lyrics that she puts into it. I remember watching a documentary where she was, trying to figure out a song that she was writing and wanting to relate it back to her fans and making sure that they would identify with whatever she was writing. So I find that interesting that comes out here. And then that gate 45 is carrying, again, that gather and lead energy. And you can literally see how her audience rallies around her. She doesn't just have like a fan base. She has this whole community that are Swifties, right? There's like this sovereign unifying quality to how she uses her voice that just naturally gathers people together.
Yeah, she really has a talent for being able to express through her music a very collective experience that a lot of her fans feel. And it's a very relatable experience that she's able to kind of amplify for other people.
Yeah. And she also has gate 13 right here in the G center. This is the gate of the listener, listening to them. So that's another gift I think that she's kind of bringing out there. And then lastly, Tony Robbins, I think, is a good example. I'm assuming most people know who he is. He's a motivational speaker, and he has a super powerful chart. He has all of these motors defined. He has a defined ego, which is rare, and everything is connected. He has single definition, so everything is talking to each other. He has a lot of community and tribal energy, bringing people together for the people. And then he has connected to the throat is that same channel that you have, Chanel, the 3536, expressing his emotions. And I don't know too much about him, but I know that he had a tough upbringing, I believe. And I know that he uses his own experiences and turning his own trauma and crisis into motivational stories, and there's that initiating energy behind it again. Like his voice is fueled by all of these motors. So it's initiating people to feel like, oh yeah, like I'm going to go do that thing. Right? Like it's very like, yes, like I can do that too type of energy coming from him.
Yeah.
It's
Like
very
if you can share your story and what you've overcome, then I can do the same.
yes. Yeah. It's just like it has that energy behind it. And I love to use this as an example because you can feel that within him when he talks. And it's like, yes, now I have the confidence to do this. But this is a good reminder to know, like his chart's pretty rare. It's very rare to have every single motor defined and have it all connecting up to the throat. So while his message might sound like, yes, like if I do everything he says, like I'll come out exactly how he is, and be this powerful person. But just remember that you might not have the exact same configuration. I'm sure that you don't have the same configuration as Tony Robbins, and while it can be very inspirational and it can feel like you can just feel very inspired and empowered by it. But just remember to always tune back into your own strategy and authority and do and express and speak in a way that feels true for you and authentic to you.
Yes.
You don't always have to be exactly like every single self-help person or motivational speaker, person out there that you're listening to. Nobody should ever be put up on that pedestal. Like you have your own gifts, you have your own timing. So I think that can be, while it's an awesome example to see how he's using his energy, it's also a good reminder for us to know that we can lean into our own chart and our own gifts.
Totally. Yeah. Love that.
Yeah. So that's kind of a simplified, I hope, version of the throat center and all of the gifts that go with it. Anything you want to add about Mercury in the third house?
Well, I just wanted to
that?
mention, like, taking it back to Sarah McLachlan and Lilith Fair, that when I was telling you about this, you looked up her chart and she has an open throat center.
Yes, she does.
And that just makes sense because an open throat center is here to amplify other people's voices.
Mm-hmm.
And she gave so many other female artists a platform. So literally their music and their voices and their writing and their art could be heard. And I just think that is such a beautiful example of that too.
Yeah, it is. It is. I've actually looked up, the throat center is more rare, but it's really interesting how many famous singers, speakers, famous people actually have an open throat. Like Oprah is another example of somebody who has an open throat. And like she is literally somebody who amplifies voices on her talk show,
Yeah, it's kind of like they're not, maybe their specific story and voice isn't meant to be amplified, but they're channels for other people to share their voices.
Yeah, I love that. It is almost like they are channels tapping into the collective energy. And because they have it open, they can kind of filter through everybody's voices and expression that's coming through and then speak it. And it resonates with a lot of different people because they can actually feel and filter through everybody else's voice. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And maybe that's not correct. What I said is their voices aren't meant to be heard. I don't mean that like they're not supposed to like speak their truth or communicate, but like on a big scale for a lot of these famous people to have an open throat, it's almost, I don't know.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, super interesting. Yeah, and I just love that piece about knowing how you're meant to operate and operating from that place instead of trying to do what everybody else is doing or do what you think you should be doing, or, yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah. And in astrology, when it comes to communication, of course, you want to look at your Mercury sign. You want to look at the sign it's in and the house it's in and any aspects to your Mercury as well. And then you also want to look at your third house in your birth chart, because the sign that's on your third house cusp and any planets that you have in the third house will also influence, how you're here to communicate and express yourself. So, if you have your Mercury in an air signs are generally very communicative and very idea oriented and very intellectual. So, Mercury air sign is really here to for mental stimulation, and they have a natural gift for speaking and for communicating. If you have your Mercury in a fire sign, it can be really helpful, I think, for you to process thoughts through movement. So maybe like going for a walk and talking, or exercise might help you. But you are here to think big and loud and bold and really express yourself, and be uninhibited maybe with the way that you communicate and speak. If you have Mercury in an earth sign, Mercury earth signs are really like no fluff. They're not speaking just to speak. They speak for a purpose. They're very practical and goal oriented and deliberate in how they speak and how they communicate themselves. And Mercury in a water sign, I think Mercury in a water sign can be maybe the most difficult for communication or expression, because they're so emotional and intuitive that emotions come first rather than words. So it can be helpful for like Mercury water signs to journal or really like tap into their emotions in some way before they really go to express themselves. But it's a very truthful, honest, emotional expression with the Mercury in a water sign. And you can kind of say the same for the sign on your third house cusp, too. That can give you hints to, how you communicate or express yourself. If you have any planets in the third house, I think that is really important. I specifically want to mention Saturn in the third house, or if you have any major Saturn aspects to your natal Mercury, because Saturn is the planet that is like restriction, boundaries. I have read from many people who have Saturn in the third house, and they say that they're very shy, or when they grew up, they were very shy. They had a very difficult time expressing themselves, expressing, how they feel. Maybe they had a more challenging like upbringing, or maybe they had a difficult time in school or a difficult time, learning. Sometimes that can come up with like Saturn in the third house, or like with difficult Saturn aspects to Mercury, like Mercury conjunct Saturn or something like that. And your Saturn return then for these people will be very important for you, very pivotal moments in your life where that is like coming up for you to really work on and learn communication and learn how to express yourself in a more authentic way, I think. Yeah. I mean, that it's very interesting, Mercury in the birth chart. Yeah. And then Mercury through the houses, you can look at what house your Mercury is in, and that can tell you a lot about communication. If you have Mercury in the 12th house, Mercury in the 12th house is more of a hidden house, and it's very internal. And so Mercury in the 12th house, you might feel like you really need a safe place. You need to turn inwards to be able to understand, how you're feeling and thinking and communicate yourself. Mercury in the 10th house is a very prominent public Mercury. So communicating and speaking and sharing your voice, if you have Mercury in the 10th house, is something that's much more accessible for you. If you have Mercury in the 4th house of home and family and private life, it might be a little bit, again, more something that is a very kind of internal process, and you feel more most comfortable communicating with close loved ones, and people that you really know and care about.
I can attest to that. I have Mercury in the 4th house, and I definitely resonate with that. I think it takes me a little longer to warm up. And then, I can definitely express myself and communicate more once I feel comfortable with family or friends.
Yeah. So you can really kind of look at like what house your Mercury is in, what sign it's in. Look at your 3rd house. Are there any planets there? Like, say you have Venus in the 3rd house. Venus is the planet of love and connection and harmony. You might be someone who, when you communicate, you have a really natural ability to connect with people and like make them feel at ease and make them feel comfortable when you're speaking with them, one-on-one. So you can just kind of look at the different like planets and their meaning if you have any planets in the 3rd house. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. Very cool.
If you have like, say, like Mercury conjunct Pluto, just as an example, like Pluto is very deep, very transformative, so when you speak, you probably are not the type of person that likes to make small talk, you want to like really go deep with people and like really, understand their deepest, darkest secrets. So I think that's really great, and just honoring yourself and your chart and the way that you are here to communicate and share. And I think with Mercury in the 3rd house too, it's not only about communication, but it's about how you process things and about how you learn and integrate information too. Everybody is just so unique and different in that way. And that's what makes us all special.
Yeah. Love that. Yeah. And if you want to go deeper and learn more about this, you can always book a reading with either one of us. You can go to stellarsisterspodcast.com and book a reading there. It'll bring you to either one of our websites. And anything else you want to say, Shaniel?
No, that's it, I think. Please leave us a 5-star review. Click the 5 stars or leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. That would really mean a lot to us. And if have any questions or thoughts on the throat center or Mercury or the 3rd house, let us know, because we'd be happy to answer some questions on future podcasts.
Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye. Before you go, if you enjoyed this conversation today, just know that this is part 1. We will be doing a part 2 and diving deeper into your authentic voice, how you communicate, how you express yourself with human design and astrology. Next time, we're going to dive deeper into your Mercury sign, the house placement, different aspects you have in your chart, and the 3rd house in astrology. And we're also going to dive deeper into your Mercury gates in human design and what that can mean. And we love this conversation, and we're excited to dive deeper into all of it. And thank you for being here and supporting us. We just hit 1,000 downloads on this podcast since starting a little less than a year ago now. And we couldn't be more excited. So thank you for all of the support and encouragement. And if you are loving what you're hearing, we would love for you to follow and subscribe if you haven't already. Share it with a friend. Leave a 5-star review. That helps us get our message out to even more people in the world. And we appreciate you, and thank you for listening.